Welcome everyone. Good morning, a very good morning to the listeners. Today we are back in the series of basics and virology with the very hot topic of coronavirus. Now, see, first of all, before beginning, let me clearly narrate my topic name. It's coronavirus. It's about the family of coronavirus. It's not about solely about SARS-CoV-2, which is commonly known as coronavirus, or actually the term coronavirus, which we came to know when unfortunately the pandemic occurred. But members of this family has been around. Uh, Few of them have been a regular pathogen. Few of them have been a major pathogen, and the outbreak of major pathogen of this particular coronavirus or similar to this coronavirus happened in started from 2003 when we were talking about SARS, and when later on we were talking about the MERS, and this is the second variant of SARS that has come and shaken the complete civilization. So please keep in mind that this particular lecture will provide you an insight on the general attributes, the structure, the genome composition, the replication cycle, the immune evasion strategies, the drug interventions that are being done based on the complete family. Based on the complete family, and perhaps in the next lecture, we'll be talking solely about SARS-CoV-2 and coronavirus and COVID-19 disease as to be specific. So the outcome of this lecture is very simple. You should have a clear understanding of coronavirus family, and you should be able to grasp this particular notion clearly that coronavirus is a family, and the coronavirus, what you all are aware, or the common name was assigned to SARS-CoV-2, which is causing COVID-19, right? So coronavirus, again, it's a general term which can be used to talk about the viruses of this of coronavirus family also. So don't mix up things. We are talking about strictly about the coronavirus family. So let's go directly to it. Let's see. In present scenario, let's start from the present pictorial representation, just to showcase you what actually are the common terminologies. See, there are three terminologies which I'm telling you. We are talking about coronavirus. That's a family. SARS-CoV-2 is actually the coronavirus which is causing the pandemic since 2020, or I should say December 2019, when it was declared pandemic, when it was first came into light in China. So that particular virus nomenclature is actually SARS-CoV-2. So SARS-CoV-1 or SARS-CoV was earlier identified as a member of coronavirus. This is the second member of the same class. And what is COVID-19? COVID-19 is a disease. COVID-19 is the name of the disease which is induced by SARS-CoV-2, or it is also called as 2019 novel coronavirus or human coronavirus 2019. So these are viruses name. This is a disease name. COVID-19 is a disease name. So that should absolutely be clear. And when we are talking about coronavirus or the coronaviruses, there are 7 human coronaviruses that are known today. Till now, there are known. I should say till now, not today. I should say till now, because we are not aware what variants will be getting in future. We are already into Delta variant and talking about so much about it. So that RNA genome which is present inside this coronavirus is rapidly changing. So when I say that there are 7 human coronaviruses that we are talking about, so out of them, 4 are normal and 3 are termed as novel. So when we are talking about the complete family classification, the order in which this particular family belongs is Nidovirales, and the Nidovirales contains coronavirus as well as Roni and Ataviridae. In this coronavirus, we have two subfamilies. One is coronavirus, of course, and the other is torovirus. Now, in the coronavirus subfamily, we are talking about 3 genuses, alpha, beta, and gamma. Alpha, beta, and gamma, which contains 7 human coronaviruses, 7 different human coronaviruses. And out of this alpha and beta, we have 7 human viruses belonging to these two genuses. And the most 3 novel coronaviruses and the most potent 3 coronaviruses that we are talking about belongs to beta coronavirus family, which we are calling it as MERS-CoV, SARS-CoV, SARS-CoV and SARS coronavirus 2. And before that, we already know that in alpha there is human coronavirus 229E, NL63, HKU1, and OC43. So when we are talking about all these viruses, it's very simple that yes, members of the coronavirus family are already known and have been known to cause multiple symptoms, and two of them were earlier known before 2019, that is SARS coronavirus and the MERS coronavirus, and they already caused havoc, and multiple strategies were adopted to resist that particular havoc, to come out of that particular scenario. So when we're talking about coronaviruses, we already know that we have divided them into four different genres: alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. Also, I didn't show you the delta part. If you talk about the past 2 decade scenario, the beta coronavirus gave you two novel forms, SARS and MERS. SARS is what? Severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus, whereas the other one was Middle East respiratory syndrome coronavirus, which caused the havoc in Middle Eastern region. So these two viruses came out as the major threat to the human population. And then in 2019, the complete world, the human population civilization came across the third most human pathogen, that is SARS-CoV-2. Apart from these three, the other four that we are talked about, the 229E and the lights of NL63, KU1 or OC43, they were also known, and they were also known to persist for longer duration of time in human population. But then again, two out of those four, two were already known from ages, and then two were also very recent. But collectively, they all four are not that much of severe pathogen. They cause mild respiratory diseases that can be clubbed to cause a common cold. But when we're talking about, in contrast to these four, when we're talking about the other three most potent, what I'm talking about, the other three pathogens, they cause very severe respiratory syndromes. And the appearance of three viruses in the past 20 years is again a line of major concern, that how quickly these particular viruses are emerging. So all the members of the coronavirus family, coronavirus family, they have a very simple line. They are single strand RNA viruses with positive strand. The positive strand single sense RNA can serve directly as mRNA inside the cell and can be used to synthesize the proteins. And these viruses are not naked; they contain enveloped viruses. And when the infection, when we're talking about in terms of the infection, they are primarily causing the respiratory tract infection. But then again, they can cause enteric, hepatic, and neurological diseases also, depending upon the severity and the broad range of specificity. And the thing what we're talk about is again that based on SARS-CoV-2, many of you might have realized that people were talking that how this virus entered inside the human population, whether it was pangolin, whether it was bat, and then they were confirmed reports that yes, it might come from bat. So when we are talking about this particular virus, so it's a zoonotic virus. The zoonotic virus is a virus which is transmitted from the animals, which is able to cross the barrier of animal to humans. So when we are talking about, see, before going into the structure, one should be able to understand, and based on this preamble, what we have discussed, what is the complete timeline? So if you talk to me or ask me that when was the first coronavirus discovered? It's simple. It was in 1931 when the first coronavirus was discovered. Then subsequently 229E came into existence in 66. Then OC43 came in 67. So you see, the two viruses which were earlier known, it was in the '60s, in the mid '60s, and since then the coronavirus family is there in human population. It's just that the new novel viruses that have come as a member of that family are very severe pathogens. And in fact, the complete first coronavirus genome was sequenced in 1987, and then the targeted recombination was done in 1992. In fact, when we're talking about 90s, from mid 90s and the late 90s, the discontinuous transcriptional studies and the reverse genetic clones were made. Then in 2002, using the electron microscopy, the structure was seen based on double membrane cycles. And then in 2003, the alarming situation came. In 2003, it was the emergence of the first of three most human pathogens called as SARS-CoV, severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus. It caused havoc. It caused havoc. It was terrible. Then later, subsequently, after that particular virus was discovered, then again different strains, different viruses were discovered like NL63 and then HKU1 on 2004, 2005, and then later on in 2012, from 5 to 12, after a gap of 7 years, again we saw an emergence of a very potent pathogenic virus called as Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus. And then, of course, after 7 years again, in 2019, we saw SARS-CoV-2, which went to pandemic state, And in 2020, it was declared as pandemic, right? So that's the timeline. Although the members of Alpha family or Alpha genus were known from 1960s. But then when we're talking about the Beta genus first variant came into limelight in 2003, 2003. Subsequently, since 2020, we have seen three potent, very severe pathogens and two mild pathogens of the same order, of the same genus. So you see, in the span of 20 years, we are talking about the appearance of 5 different viruses or discovery of 5 different viruses. So this was the time, and when we are talking about the structure is very simple. It's not a complicated virus. The structure is very simple and it contains within the cycle. It's an envelope virus which contains a single strand plus sense DNA plus sense RNA, and the outer part. If we are talking about the outer part, the projections what we are seeing are the spike proteins, and this is the envelope which the spike proteins are embedded in the envelope. The envelope is made up of lipoprotein, and the protein is called as E protein. And then what the rings what we are seeing are called as M protein, and there is another proteinaceous molecule which is bound to the complete RNA. It's called as nucleocapsid protein. The nucleocapsid protein. So you see, four main proteins are required for the complete structure formation. That is E, M, S, and N. N is of course required for as a nucleocapsid protein, but then again the outer shell when we are talking about the envelope is made up of three proteins: E, M, and S. E, M, and S. S for spike protein, M for membrane protein, N for nucleocapsid protein that is required for regulation of RNA application. Whereas when we are talking about the E protein, which is present as an envelope protein, is absolutely necessary. Apart from this, when we are talking about the beta genus coronaviruses or the beta variants of OC43 and HKU1, they also contain hemagglutinin esterase glycoprotein, which is of course attributed to their rapid uptake by mucosal cells. So when we are talking about this particular spikes arrangement, if you see from this particular image, it gives you an appearance of a crown. It gives you an appearance of the crown where the base is there and the crown is in this position. And in this crown, based on this crown, the nomenclature was given as corona. So when we are talking about this particular spikes, these are spikes are glycoproteins, and the M protein is also glycoprotein, and this spike glycoprotein is a kind of a peptomer which we are talking about. So this spike protein is actually responsible for the attachment to the surface receptor which are present in human cells and the lower airway path which we are talking about. So that was all about the structure. When we are talking about the structure, we should be able to understand how the complete genome is coding for these structural proteins, and what are other proteins that are associated with viral propagation when we are talking about the non-structural proteins. So when we are talking about the complete coronavirus genomic content, you can range it. Like if you're talking about the example of SARS-CoV and MERS-CoV, their size ranges from 29 kilobase pairs to 30 kilobase pairs. The range is the scale we have spanned till the 32.5 kilobase pairs, where we are talking about the SARS-CoV, which is ranging till 29 kilobase, equivalent to 29 kilobase pairs, whereas the MERS-CoV is equivalent to 30 point something base pairs. So part is, despite of this length variation, that in the constituent part is equal. Like they both can be divided into two parts: coding for non-structural proteins and the section which is coding for the structural proteins. So when we are talking about the structural proteins are four proteins: spike 1, spike protein, E, M, and N protein. Both are common. Then we have two reading frames. Then we have two reading frames in the remaining portion, which codes for non-structural proteins. And the first reading frame, called as ORF1A, is actually responsible for coding the proteases. For proteases, the proteases of the likes of the 3CL flow, which is which causes the effective proteolysis of the polypeptide chain, which is formed from this particular virus, the viral polypeptide. And then we have PLPR, which is again a very potent viral protease, which is involved in proteolysis, as well as this particular PLPR is responsible to act as antagonist towards interferon and cause the immune suppression, or prevent the antiviral state that will be focused by the host cell to establish, so that the remaining cells, the remaining non-infected cells, can be signaled to prepare and fight against this particular infection. Then this particular PLPR also plays a very crucial role. It prevents the it actually causes the deubiquitination, thereby it prevents the proteasome mediated degradation of the protein. So the cell machinery, or the cellular proteasome, which is responsible for degrading the degrading the aberrant proteins, should not be able to attach polyubiquitin, should not be able to cause polyubiquitination on the viral protein, and that's the job of this particular PLPRO. Then the second ORF, what we are talking about, the ORF1B. This particular ORF1B contains the genes which are actually responsible for replication cycle. These proteins are none other than the polymerases that are required, the RNA dependent RNA polymerase and the helicase that is required. So these two are the major enzymes that are taking part, or that are being coded by this particular genome. Then when we are talking about the complete assembly part, see, in case of viral assembly, the SARS-CoV-2, this particular N protein, the N protein in terms of SARS-CoV, the first virus, the SARS-CoV virus, this particular nucleocapsid protein is responsible to behave as antagonist for interferons, as well as it also performs RNA silencing. Whereas when we're talking about MERS-CoV, then the M protein, the membrane protein, which is present, which is present here as glycoprotein, this is responsible to act as interferon antagonist. Whereas the another protein that we're talking about, the E protein here, the E protein, or the viroporin, is actually forms the viroporin in case of SARS-CoV. So you see, although E, M, and N have different attributes associated with them in these two viruses, but then again, the common factor that is being shared is through S protein, which is responsible for receptor attachment and receptor mediated endocytosis. So next, after discussing the genome part and the structure part, the focus should be on how the family members are replicating, how this coronaviridae replicates inside the host cell. So first of all, it can follow both the parts. It can attach to the receptor, and then based on receptor mediated endocytosis, an endosome will be formed, and this endosome's pH will be varied. There will be efflux of the hydrogen ions inside the endosome, and then based on the lower pH, the envelope protein will be fusing with the membrane of the endosome, thereby releasing the positive sense RNA molecule. And on the other hand, if some of the viruses of this particular family can directly fuse with the plasma membrane, and then with invagination, then after fusing, they can directly go for releasing the genomic RNA. They can go for the releasing of genomic RNA. So after once the positive sense RNA is released, it can directly act as mRNA because it contains the poly-A tail. So the ribosomes will be binding, and it can start synthesizing its protein. So the early proteins which are synthesized are the one which are actually required for the transcription process, and the proteins of which are made up from both the open ready frames, not the structural proteins. We are talking about the non-structural proteins. So once these non-structural proteins are being made, they initiate the process of increasing the plus sense RNA number. So what is happening? Once the early proteins are being formed, then the plus mRNA, the plus strand RNA molecule of virus, will go to the membrane vesicles, and from membrane vesicles, the RNA-dependent RNA polymerase will be utilizing the plus sense RNA to form a negative sense RNA molecule. A negative sense RNA molecule. Then this negative sense RNA molecule, which is now formed, will serve as a template to give you multiple copies of subgenomic plus sense RNA molecule, which will be later on be packed. Yeah, will be going for packaging assembly and then forming a mature virus. So once the number is increasing, simultaneously this particular RNA which is being formed is used as RNA to synthesize the multiple proteins. Now in the second phase, the late proteins will be synthesized. In second phase, the late proteins will be synthesized. What are those late proteins? Already the virus has established that there should be enough proteolysis by forming the proteases. There should be an RNA-dependent polymerase. There should be a helicase also. We should be able to open up the complementary strands if they're getting attached, and then should be able to release any kind of super secondary structure which is informed. And also the number has been increased. Now what are the other proteins? The other proteins that will be now expressed are the structural proteins. Now the structural proteins of the likes of E, M, S and N proteins will now be prepared. Then after preparing, now the packaging will be starting. So this particular early formation of second phase formation of proteins will give rise to, first of all, the N protein, the S, M and D. The S, M and E protein will be going and attaching to the endoplasmic reticulum, whereas the N protein which is being formed will be attaching to the mRNA molecule. And once this mRNA it is attaches to the mRNA molecule, the N protein, then the complete vesicle goes via ERGIC complex, and then it is secreted out. How it is happening? See, the mRNA, the plus sense RNA which is formed, goes to the endoplasmic reticulum, and then it forms a vesicle, where the vesicle these proteins which are present on the membrane of the endoplasmic reticulum now forms a vesicle, and then they start forming the envelope. And then when the vesicle is bud off, it meets the Golgi body. So this particular ERGIC complex which is formed is called as endoplasmic reticulum Golgi complex. And then the N protein will be binding to this particular RNA molecule, and the assembly will be completed, and then a smooth walled vesicle will be formed. And after maturation and proper arrangement of N protein, this particular virus will be released out of the cell. And this is how the complete replication is happening. And this is how we go about for the general description of a coronavirus family. That's the general attribute. Now what happens at this particular point of attachment? What receptors are being utilized? So see, when we are talking about receptor, you should be having a clear-cut statement in your mind that we are discussing coronavirus, we are talking about any specific virus. So in line to understand the receptor, we have to read different like nanopeptidase, the which is a human coronavirus E, or we are talking about classical ACE2, that is angiotensin converting enzyme 2, which is utilized by CP and SARS virus, that is the recent 2. It utilized ACE2 and converting enzyme. When we are talking about dipeptide and peptidase 4, DPP4, which is exclusively utilized by MERS-CoV, the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome coronavirus. So you see, the specificity in terms of affecting a certain kind of tissue depends upon the availability of these receptors. If these receptors are present on a certain tissue, then the viral will be focusing on that infecting the particular tissue, and that presence of these receptors responsible for viral and pathogenicity. So when we are talking about when we talked about the release of sense RNA, and then first phase starts where the non-structural protein expression is going about. It produces the lights of PP1A and PP1AB, which are again a potent proteases, So when we are talking about understanding the complete structure and talking about the replication cycle, then we should be very how this is not happening. Establish the concept how that. See, it is attaching with a certain kind of receptor. We are calling it as angiotensin converting enzyme receptor. It is forming a receptor-mediated endocytosis to form an endosome. Then the RNA is released Now, this particular RNA, there is a non-structural part, and in this non-structural part, we are talking about the two reading frames, the ORF1A and ORF1B. So, first of all, the ORF1A is starting synthesizing, is getting synthesized. Now, when it is synthesized, it goes and attaches to this plus mRNA, the plus RNA. Now, this plus RNA complex will be going to the membrane bound vesicles to go about and increase this number, So once the number is increased, then the second phase of translation starts, secreting the structural proteins, and then the assembly is starting. And then the assembly, how it starts? It starts via ERGIC complex, to Golgi body. Golgi body then follows the route of exocytosis, and then it is released. The mature viral particle is released. That's what we established. So, what are the based on this understanding, what are the steps or stages where we can target or provide a drug intervention in order to inhibit the replication part? First of all, what you can do, you can simply neutralize the virus by using antibodies, or you can stop or you stop the attachment or inhibit the attachment by using receptor antagonists, by using competitive inhibitors, or you can prevent the receptor mediated endocytosis by simply using host protease inhibitors, or you can use the inhibitors for viral proteases also, or you can use the specific inhibitors for RNA dependent RNA polymerase, or you can use the proteins or the inhibitors or the drugs which are targeting the maturation of viral particle. So these are the stages that have been exploited to come across a putative drug which can be used under clinical settings and the therapeutic settings with a higher therapeutic gain, So when we are talking about the complete replication process, we should have a very clear cut notion in the mind that the subgenomic RNA molecule which is formed, the first molecule which is formed is always negative sense RNA, because it is using the viral plus sense RNA dependent polymerase will be using this plus sense to form a negative sense, and then this particular negative sense genomic RNA will be used to form the multiple subgenomic mRNAs. So that is how the complete replication is going about, and each of the subgenomic RNA at their 5' end contains the leader sequence, and that leader sequence is necessary in order for translation for attachment to the ribosomes also. So that is all what we should talk about in this particular replication cycle. The discussion what we had in this and the previous slide. Always remember, the virus is released from endoplasmic reticulum to Golgi body, and the intermediate complex called as endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi intermediate complex, which again fuses with the Golgi, matures the virus, and then matured particle is now released out via exocytosis. So after discussing the complete replication cycle, one should be very clear how the immune responses are generated and how this particular coronavirus is able to go for immune evasion. See, as with the case of any other RNA containing virus or the double strand RNA virus, see, this is also an uncapped mRNA, in a sense of uncapped mRNA, and this particular viral RNA is recognized by our immune system. By using the molecular patterns, specifically the PAMs. The PAMs are what? Pathogen associated molecular patterns, and in this case we are talking about the viral pathogen associated molecular patterns. These are recognized by the receptors, the pattern recognition receptors. What are those pattern recognition receptors? The lights of RIG1, called as retinoic inducible gene 1, or when we are talking about the melanoma differentiation associated protein MDA5. So these receptors will recognize the RNA molecule and will trigger the immune responses. And when I'm talking about the triggering of the immune response, that the end point of the triggering is to activate the immunomodulator or the immunoregulatory transcription vector called as NF-kappa B. Now, the expression of NF-kappa B or the activation of NF-kappa B will cause its nuclear localization, and it will bind to its response element, thereby causing the expression of its downstream genes. And into its downstream, the genes which are present are actually nothing but the pro-inflammatory cytokines that are required to mount the immune response against the virus infection. So Once when we are talking about the cytokines, we should also talk about the interferons, because those are the primary cytokines that are released as an immune response, and these interferons are actually responsible for maintaining the antiviral state. So similar to the cases of any other virus, this RNA virus also induces type 1 interferon signaling by interferon beta receptor, and also activates the transcription factor of the likes of STAT molecule or STAT transcription factor. Then the STAT transcription factor will be going and along with the interferon releasing factor will be causing the expression of the of the interferons or the lights of interferon induced protein, interferon gene cluster. So what will be happening? Let us see in a pictorial representation. The infected cell, what it is doing. The infected cell, what it is doing. The RNA molecule will be recognized by the pattern recognition receptor, whether it is retinoic 1 or melanoma 1. Once it is recognizing, it will activate the MAV5, which is present on the mitochondria, and this MAV5 job is to sequentially activate the NF-kappa B. Once the NF-kappa B is activated, then it goes for nuclear localization and causes the expression of pro-inflammatory cytokines, which will cause inflammation and which will mount the response against this virus. Secondly, after activating of MAV5, its other job is to activate the IRF3 and IRF5, interferon regulatory factor 3 and 7, so that they can go inside the nucleus, bind to their respective interferon promoter, and thereby cause the expression of type 1 interferons. So you see, once the type 1 interferons are now formed, what is their job? Their job is to act as postman and go to the other cell, go to the adjacent and neighboring cell, and inform them that yes, the cell is now infected by the virus. You might also get infected. Please prepare your army. And that how they do? They go and bind to their receptor, interferon receptor, which is associated with the tyrosine kinase and the Janus kinase or JAK at the cytoplasmic domain. So once the binding of receptor and the ligand, that is interferon, has occurred, these kinases get activated and thereby causes the phosphorylation of STAT1 and STAT2. When both the STAT1 and STAT2 get phosphorylated, they dimerizes, and then the dimeric STAT protein uh, is a docking site for binding to the interferon regulatory factor 9, and together these three forming a complex serves as a transcription factor to activate the interferon response element, which will be responsible for synthesizing the other interferons and the remaining cytokines that are required for mounting an antiviral state. So this is how the immune response is produced inside our body. But then still the virus is very pathogenic. So what is the mechanism? By what mechanism it is performed? How it causes the evasion of this highly coordinated immune system? So what the virus is doing, let us now discuss what the virus is doing. See, viruses, as soon as it enters, it can be directly recognized by the ribosome, and it goes for the synthesis of protein. The proteins what it is synthesizing are ORF1a, the first reading frame. Now that first reading frame I told you has interferon antagonist, and also it has proteases. Let us see what it is doing. The 4A molecule, the 4A protein, which is produced by the virus, directly inhibits this particular protein. The 3B inhibits both the pattern receptors that are responsible for recognizing this RNA molecule. The M protein inhibits the signaling kinase, well as the PLPRO, which is actually the protease, inhibits the activation of NF-kappa B along with 4A4B. And then again, the the antagonist of interferon, the inhibition of the this binding of the transcription factor to the interferon promoter is inhibited by MS protein or 4A4B protein. Similarly, in the other cells also, and the same infected cell also, to stop the synthesis of interferon, what they do, they prevent the binding of this particular transcription factor to its response element. So you see, the virus is fully aware of the response, and it is completely equipped to inhibit each and every step, so that it can easily evade the immune response. And that is what happening. That is what happening at the end of at the end of the complete infection, what it is doing, it wants to flourish, and it will be able to flourish once it is able to evade our immune response. And that evasion, by evasion I mean to suppress the interferon signaling and to suppress the inflammatory cytokines expression, to suppress the interferon cytokine inflammatory cytokine expression. So when we're talking about the viruses, both these viruses, whether it is SARS-CoV or whether it is a MERS-CoV, they have developed their mechanism to evade the immune response, interfere with the signaling pathway, thereby modulating the host immune responses. So when we are talking about modulating the host responses, both of them are focused on suppressing the interferon mediated signaling or the binding of interferon with the its receptor, thereby activating the Janus kinase as well as tyrosine kinase pathway. So in short, what they are doing, they are preventing the transcription of interferon stimulated genes. They are preventing the transcription of interferon stimulated genes, thereby their aim is to stop the antiviral state, so that the antiviral innate immune response should not be able to mount, and the virus will get the ample time to increase its number. Now the virus will get the ample time to increase its number. This is how the immune evasion is going about. That is how the immune evasion is going about, and that is what we had discussed in the terms of genomic part. So after discussing the immune evasion, let us talk about the transmission part, how it is transmitted. See, it's a zoonotic virus. It's a zoonotic virus. It can be transmitted from animals to the humans. And I have taken an example of SARS-CoV-2 since it is currently being studied so much. So it can be transferred from humans to humans with via small or large droplets, via direct contact, also by the contact by using by getting in contact with the contaminated surfaces also. Yes, by the blood transfusion is still investigated. The expert whether it was accidental laboratory exposure, that is still under investigation. Whether it can be transferred by organ transplantation, we are not aware. Then whether it is transplacental about SARS-CoV-2, so the studies are still going on in that aspect. So it affects the upper respiratory, it causes the upper respiratory infection, and a normal human coronavirus causes 5 to 10% of the times the common cold. And with the outbreaks what we have given, the severity may range to the terminal cases also in case of these human pathogenic viruses. So out of 7, when we had talked about the 4 which are predominantly causing the upper airway respiratory infection, are responsible for causing common cold, and depending upon the seasonality and unpredictability, generally under winter cases the infection appears. So what are the symptoms are normal, like dry cough, uh, running nose, normal upper respiratory infection system what you see. And in rare cases you might see pneumonia also. So that is the general attribute. We are not gone into the pathogenesis of how COVID-19 is going about. Why? Because we are discussing about coronavirus part. So when we are talking about understanding this part, let us see what drugs have been targeted, at what stages. So let's talk about the drug discovery, and then perhaps in the next lecture we'll pick up from where we left. See, in order to inhibit the attachment of the virus to its receptor, there have been multiple strategies that have been utilized using the monoclonal antibodies which can target the S1 proteins, or using the antiviral peptides against the S proteins subunit, or using furin inhibitor, actually the furin inhibitor which is responsible for inhibiting the endocytosis, the receptor mediated endocytosis. Not only receptor mediated endocytosis with furin inhibitors, but see, every endocytosis is associated with clathrin proteins. So if you inhibit those proteins, the invagination will not be able to happen. So using obeying and chlorpromazine, thereby inhibiting clathrin, people have targeted to stop the receptor mediated endocytosis. Then inhibiting the cathepsin using E64D is also shown to stop the endosomal pathway. Then apart from receptor mediated endocytosis, when we had talked about the fusion with the membrane, people have targeted the campsostat mesylate inhibitor, the inhibitor which is used. And then again the monoclonal antibodies, the peptides, the small molecules, to prevent the entry inside the host. have been targeted to, just to prevent the fusion, and so that the release should not be happening. Then see, after forming the endosome, the release of the plus RNA strand is happening because of the change in the pH inside the endosome, and that change in the pH is actually happening because of hydrogen ion influx. So if you are able to prevent that influx, if you are able to prevent the acidification of that endosome, you might prevent the viral release, and that's where the chloroquine comes into play. So you see the terminology, why we are talking about the hydroxychloroquine here. Then the chloroquine is coming into play. Then the chloroquine is coming into play. And then when we are going into replication part, where the plus mRNA is being utilized, and it goes for the translation for forming the early proteins. Then the early proteins which are formed are PLPRO, and there are multiple steps that were targeted to directly inhibit this particular protease, and eventually an inhibitor JRL 0617 was identified, which can directly inhibit this particular PLPRO. Not even that, the other protease inhibitor called as lopinavir is effectively used as a potent protease inhibitor in multiple settings, whether we are talking about this particular virus, whether we are talking about other viruses, or whether we are talking about this use in coronavirus COVID-19 cases also. Then the helicase inhibitors are also there. Directly the RNA dependent RNA polymerase inhibitor is there, which we are talking about the ribavirin, or we are talking about the remdesivir part. Not even that, when we are talking about the membrane bound RNA synthesis that is happening, its inhibitor is also available. So at every stage, the inhibitors have been isolated, they have been investigated, they are still under the investigation phase. Some of them have been approved to be used in the clinical settings, like lopinavir is used under clinical settings. So this all was feasible, this all was possible only after understanding the complete replication part, and then only after determining what are the players that a virus is bringing inside our cell, we are able to selectively inhibit those players. But please remember, every time I tell you, whatever the antiviral drug we use, it should be supporting our immune system. It should not be a immunosuppressant, or it should not induce any kind of, you know deficiency in our own army, right? Then only collectively we will be able to mount the response. So that is all that we wanted to discuss in this particular lecture. I was hoping that a general introduction of coronavirus will be helpful before we go in depth to the three main pathogenic viruses, or the main pathogenic virus that we are talking about, the SARS-CoV-2. So again, as our normal case, that one should be able to talk about the MCQs after going with the complete lecture. So MCQs are for your brushing up memory, so that you understand the basic things based on these MCQs. So coronavirus contains large size RNA genome of length of what? Is it 10 to 15 or 26 to 30? What is the range? How many coronaviruses are known? Whether it's 3, 5, 1, 7. COVID-19 is caused by which variant, or the SARS coronavirus belongs to which of the following genera, whether it was alpha, beta, gamma, or delta. Which of the following is a very common receptor? Very common receptor for SARS-CoV. So you have to go through the lecture, and then you can easily answer these questions. Or when we are talking about ERIGC, what was ERIGC? Whether it was there in replication process, that's up to you to answer. Which of the following is an immunoregulatory transcription factor? Which of them are actually immunomodulatory transcription factor, I should say? Whether it is NF-kappa B, or the other two also plays a very crucial role. So you can take the reference of these options and you can search and read a bit about all these three. Then which of the following is an interferon antagonist? Whether it was N, M, S, or E, which of the following protein was actually an interferon antagonist? So that you can see easily when you go through this particular lecture. So which of the following complex is responsible for increasing the viral number? Whether it is helicase or replicase or transcriptase, or all three of them are actually working in the replication part. Then which of the following cytokine is released in response to viral infection? Whether it is interleukin 2, which is responsible for clonal propagation of T cells, whether it is IL-6, which is again a pro-inflammatory cytokine, or TNF beta, again a pro-inflammatory cytokine, or the interferon, the type 1 interferon, which is actually uh, under the regulation of interferon response factors or regulatory factors. So which is most important? And the answer is in front of you, the type 1 interferon. So for your further reading based on Coronaviridae family, these are the content that you should be focusing on. These are the MCQs that you should be focusing on. And with this, I extend my gratitude and thanks to all the students for patience listening. I hope the lecture was fruitful to you all, and with the promise that we'll again meet with another topic and continuation of this, the SARS-CoV. We'll be talking about the SARS-CoV-2 in the coming lectures under the series of disease of biology. Till then, stay safe. Wish you a very, very happy learning, and please keep reading. Thank you. Thank you so much.